Hi, Anna.
Hi, Sam.
How's it going today?
Really good. I'm so energized today.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Why is that?
because I slept really well last night and we have a great slate of activities today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that of which I only know half of. But
You know 2/3. You know what we're doing right now.
what are we doing right now?
We're talking about Frankenstein.
What?
Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein.
That's crazy. We just watched it last night.
Oh my God, what a coincidence.
Yeah. So yeah, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein.
You chose this movie. Why did you choose this movie?
So I am going to reveal my hand and that I've been interested in the movie since I have known about it, but I did recently watch a video essay by The Morbid Zoo on YouTube, and she made a very compelling case for the movie being good, especially in reaction to some other people who had not bashed the movie, but just didn't find it as compelling as she did. And it's really just her thoughts on it. And it really piqued my interest, even more so than it already had. And so I was like, we should watch this movie this weekend.
Shout out to the Morbid Zoo.
Yeah.
Should we start with a
Rundown?
plot summary? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, spoilers ahead.
For Frankenstein, a novel that has been around for over 200 years.
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about the movie.
Well, yeah, but it fairly closely follows the plot.
It's a more faithful adaptation, I would say, than like the very famous 1930s, 1940s
Yeah.
horror movie.
Which isn't to say that that makes it better, but
I would say that makes it better, but that's just my opinion, man.
yeah. I also have not seen the 1930s movie, so I will not make any comment. But obviously, I think it is generally a cultural, it isn't within our cultural unconscious, the sight of like the grunting monster with the bolts on the side of its head that is stumbling around. It's just that image of Frankenstein and or more correctly, Frankenstein's creature or Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, which have you ever seen the meme that's like a picture of the last page of the book? And then somebody wrote in, like, it's this beautiful romantic prose about him, floating away on the ice. And somebody wrote in pen, like, and as he disappeared toward the horizon, the creature said, "By the way, you can just refer to me as Frankenstein and not Frankenstein's monster. I really don't mind."
That would be very helpful. It certainly would half the number of words we would need to use. But I think for
today, we're going to have to differentiate because we're going to be talking about Victor and we're going to be talking about the creature.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, okay. So we start out, we are in the Arctic. There is a ship. There are some sailors on the ship. They are French.
Danish.
They're Danish. And they're working really hard to get this ship unstuck from the ice. And the men are demoralized and exhausted, and they're worried that the vessel won't be seaworthy. And the captain is saying, "You're going to keep on working and we're going to complete our mission." He is like dead set. And then there's an explosion. We go to investigate the explosion and we find a man unconscious, half dead in the snow. We realize that one of his legs is a prosthetic. We see that he has a wound on his shoulder. We bring him back to the ship, and then after he arrives at the ship, this very, very tall man with superhuman strength comes and starts trying.
Well, and I think the movie also makes a point to, in the dialogue, to say that the sailors don't even believe that it is a man. They're like, is it a bear? Is it they call it a creature, I think, from the outset.
Yeah, they call him a creature. And part of that is his size. And part of that is his power and the facial differences that he has. So he has like stitches and scars around his face, and his skin is not like a color that you would usually see on a white person. It's like gray. Patches of it are more gray than others. And yeah, this very large man is very angry. He's trying to get to the wounded man that the sailors have rescued, and he's screaming his name, Victor, Victor, Victor. And he kills 6 of the sailors. Right away, we are set up for how graphic the violence is going to be in this movie. And eventually the captain shoots the ice, sinks the creature into the water, and then begins speaking to the man who they've rescued, who introduces himself as Victor and says, the creature is going to come back and you need to send me away to him because he won't stop until he finds me and he can't die. And so the captain says, what up? How, what's your deal? What's his deal? What's going on? Except he says it way more poetical than that. And Victor says, well, let me tell you my whole life story. And then where do we go in our flashback?
Well, we go back to Victor as a kid. We see Victor's childhood. He grew up in a very well-to-do home. His dad is a renowned surgeon, medical doctor. His mom is from a wealthy French noble family.
His dad does not love her. It is a marriage of wealth and convenience.
Yep. Victor has a little brother on the way, and he is very close with his mom, and his dad is very cold with him. His dad is trying to raise him to be the next generation of premier surgeon. We get scenes where his dad's physically abusing him and verbally abusing him in an effort to try and toughen him up and teach him.
And not in a way that's like typical of the era. It's more in a way of just actual contempt. I want you to be this way. You are instead this way. I'm going to be cold and punitive with you at all times. And instead of ever expressing any kind of affection, I will beat you when you are displeasing me, which I think is like, even in cultures where corporal punishment is normal, that's not normal. I'm going to mention a detail that stuck with me for some reason. He talks about like his father wasn't around a lot. And whenever his father wasn't there, he said, mother was mine, which I think is a hint about his character.
Oh, yeah. He definitely has mommy issues.
His mommy issues. He is narcissistic. He doesn't treat other people as fully formed humans whose emotions and thoughts matter. That's like a pattern that shows up throughout the movie. So his mom has a complication with her pregnancy. His father takes her off to try to rescue her and deliver the baby. She's bleeding. We get this very beautiful Guillermo del Toro image of like the dad has left the room. He's left a bloody handprint on Victor's white shirt that...
The mom.
Oh, the mom
Yeah,
has.
the mom was
has
bleeding.
left a bloody handprint on Victor's white shirt, and then it matches the red handprint on his face from his dad slapping him moments before. His mother dies. His brother survives. Victor quickly concludes that his dad could have saved his mom and chose not to. And then his brother, he says, is everything that I'm not. He's jolly, he's blonde, he's easygoing. I am brunette, I am dark, I am brooding. He's a goth kid in a gothic story.
And then the father dies. Victor and his brother are basically separated at this point, go to live with, I think Victor, I guess, is kind of old enough to be on his own, or at least go to school. Probably. And the younger brother is sent to live with other relatives. And
there's affection between them. You see them hug.
Oh, yeah. I think throughout the whole movie, Victor loves his brother.
Yeah.
And is one of the few people, I think, that Victor really loves.
Yeah, even though he didn't treat him like it. So, yeah, so they're separated. Now we're racing ahead in time. Victor...
Real quick, though, I do want to say...
Oh, yeah, what's up?
This isn't super important, but just the funerals, and more so the
coffin.
The coffins.
Oh, my God, so beautiful.
Pretty.
Yeah. I wonder if that's historically accurate.
Yeah.
Is it?
Oh, well, no, I don't know. I was wondering the same thing. Or if it's just like
Guillermo del Toro
just
thing.
being like, hey, let's throw some just crazy death imagery in there.
I am like the kind of person who will throw on a movie or a show and like mostly listen while I play a game on my phone or something. Not so with this movie. It is a visual feast. I wanted to be watching it the whole time with my eyeballs. Just lovely to look at, including a lot of the violence. Okay, so now we're grown up and we are a medical man. When I say we, I mean Victor. We have a presentation before, I don't know, some kind of organized group of scientists.
Like a medical tribunal. I think it says it's a disciplinary hearing, so we don't really know why Victor's there, but it's presumed based on the fact that it's a disciplinary hearing that he is there because he has committed some unprofessional conduct that he is before a committee to review. And I believe this is basically to review whether he should retain his license or not.
Okay, yeah, and he's got a flair for the dramatic. He brings in the top half of a corpse. Again, beautiful visual with this creature. He explains about how he has channeled electricity and chi. He's put needles into this corpse in key areas that chi is supposed to be flowing through, which I thought was a cool detail because I think, like, for far longer than humans have understood the systems and mechanisms underlying our anatomy, we have observed things that we can do to heal ourselves. And it's like, it's interesting to me how different cultures like conceptualized those healing methods and theorized about the mechanisms behind them, and how a lot of them were like really getting at something, you know, like a lot of the time, like something that is not still well understood. Like, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I might be wrong about this, I think acupuncture actually holds up in double-blind studies.
I mean, I'm not going to comment just because I don't know.
You don't know.
I know there have been studies. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there have been studies that have showed a positive effect of it. I don't know how rigorous those studies are or the nature of those studies. But needless to say, I think the one thing I can confidently say is that even if acupuncture isn't accessing something physically there's so much to be said about things that mentally improve our well-being.
But also, I think even like in terms of the physical reality of like the body and the brain, like there is so much more going on than we actually understand.
Yeah, even today.
Yeah, and we for many generations, humans have been healing each other and finding things that work for some reason. All right, so yeah, so he's got this corpse.
While Victor is performing this act of reanimating this corpse, basically, the entire time the corpse is just like gasping for breath. I get the impression that the corpse is in pain or is suffering.
Yeah, I get that impression too.
Yeah. Meanwhile, just this room full of people are just standing around, curiously watching.
Yeah, gawking. There is mayhem and controversy going on in the room, but it is not related to cruelty. It's related to you're doing things that only God is supposed to be able to do, right? He very significantly tosses an apple to the corpse. The corpse catches it.
I think it's a ball.
I thought that
it is a red spherical shape.
I could have sworn it was an apple. I thought that somebody like took a bite out of it at one point because we had the apple and then later we had the peach, remember?
Yes.
So, yeah, we've got reflexes, we've got decision making. It's splashy. It's controversial. The outraged, judge at the tribunal says, "Turn that thing off." he cuts the flow of electricity that's animating this person. And we see him go back to his dark apartment rooms that have like lots of books and skulls and things. And
definitely a goth kid. His uncle shows up, or not his uncle, somebody's uncle. A guy shows up.
Well,
no, it is his soon to be. Well, his brother is getting married. Victor's brother is getting married, and the woman who his brother is getting married to, her uncle shows up.
He's a rich arms dealer, and he's also a weirdo.
And he was at the tribunal.
Yes. And he liked what he saw.
Yeah.
But he says, basically what you're presenting is very dramatic and there is less underlying it than you're trying to make it out to be. And he says, I want to partner with you in pursuing this. Also, your brother and his fiance are going to be in town soon and you should come have lunch with all of us. So he comes to have lunch with all of them. What is the character's name?
Harland?
Harland?
Harlander.
Harlander. So he goes to meet with Harlander, and Harlander is taking a staged photograph of a naked woman. Again, this motif of I'm an important man doing important pursuits and your human discomforts and emotions do not concern me. She's really hungry. She's eating the peaches. And he's saying, I need these for the still lifes.
Yeah, and photography is in its infancy. He is, as with many of the men in this movie, he is seemingly trailblazing forward in this new technological discovery.
Yeah, and in doing so, he does not care if you're cold and hungry while you're posing for his picture. And so, Victor comes in. Harlander says, I want to fund your research on this. There is a system in the body, the limbic system. The lymphatic system. And it encases and has an entry point around the heart.
Yeah, there's this nexus of lymphatic nodes around the heart.
What does the lymphatic system actually do?
It is primarily part of the immune system. So it hosts a good amount of immune cells and is part of it kind of works adjunct to the circulatory system to clear wastes and fight infections. When people talk about their lymph node swelling in their neck, that's part of the lymphatic system.
Oh, so he says, yes, I want you to use this system to restart a heart, and I have limitless funds for you. I am super fucking invested in this.
Yeah.
And Victor is like, I don't know. And Harlander is like, stop being coy. Your forthrightness is what I respect about you. The two of them are clearly vibing.
Yeah.
Intellectually.
There's this part in the scene where they shake hands and then they pull each other close, and it seems very homoerotic.
Oh, really? I didn't even pick up on that. I'm usually the one to pick up on that stuff.
Yeah, it just they go to shake hands and then they pull each other in close and they're looking deep into each other's eyes. There's a sense of connection.
Homosociality between men delights and fascinates me. I remember in college I had, before I got into fitness, I had male friends who would like to lift weights a lot together, and we would talk about how they just go to the gym and they just lift heavy weights while staring deeply into each other's eyes, and I found that so charming.
Yeah, it's a great sense of connection for a group of people that sometimes can't always express their affection for one another very well.
Yeah, not verbally. So Victor's brother arrives. They're very happy to see each other. His brother is so excited to introduce his fiancée, played by the wonderful Mia Goth. Definitely in my top 3 scream queens. She tops them all out, honestly. She's so beautiful in this movie.
Great costume design.
Great costume design, yeah.
Set and costume design are just on point.
And she, the ingenue with an incredibly unique way of looking at the world comes across beautifully in her performance. So we meet her. Victor is fascinated by her. The 4 of them have a conversation, and the fiancée, Elizabeth, played by Mia Goth, starts opining about ideas and how ideas such as patriotism and valor and scientific discovery that men romanticize and hold up as very important, often don't hold up in their importance once you see the human cost of upholding those ideas, which is never exacted upon the men who hold those ideas.
Yeah. And more specifically, she's referring to war.
Anyway, by the time she is really opining, the other men have retired for their cigars and brandy.
Yeah, they don't want to hear her empathize with the
peasants who are dying on the battlefield. Yeah. And when she finishes presenting her thesis, she says, now go on with the men. You've got your very important cigars and brandy to tend to. Kind of dismissing him.
Yeah, pegging him as the sort of aristocracy that she is complaining about.
Yeah, and I think accurately.
Yeah.
So he develops a fascination with her as Harlander sets him up in this absolutely gorgeous, I think it's a water tower.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. It's tall, it's broken down, it's overgrown with vines. There's this big ass hole right in the middle of it that goes all the way down into the basement.
Very both phallic and yonic. Which, I mean, fitting.
Yeah, there's a lot of gender going on. Oh, we should have mentioned he always wants to drink milk. Victor only drinks milk.
Yes.
Which I thought was so significant. There's some major mommy issues going on with this guy. So yeah, we're in this beautiful tower. We need to build this big, complicated structure with these huge, gorgeous batteries and conductors that are made of pure silver. And we need to harvest body parts. Again, this very dehumanizing, dispassionate. He goes to public hangings and assesses men who are about to die while they're still alive for their body parts. Just obscene. And meanwhile, he's fascinated by Elizabeth. He's low-key stalking her. She's onto him. So she is kind of flirting, but doing so by outsmarting him. And he continues to underestimate her. They go to lunch. He wants to see what book she's bought at the market. He's suggesting that it's like a romance. No, it's a scientific text about insects. And she talks about her fascination with the natural world, which is very rooted in her faith and her understanding of intelligent design in a lovely way.
She talks about how beauty can be seen in the small things.
The smallest things, yeah. So Victor has his brother do a bunch of work setting up his lab for him so that he can spend a bunch of time with his brother's fiance, right? And as you said, this is the one person who he has real affection for. Here's how he's treating him. Victor sucks. The movie very much is oh, you hate him. And I'm yes, I do. Thank you for making that so clear. And
they easily could have failed that because they're obviously going through his childhood show why he is part of why he is so
cold and cruel.
Yeah, psychologically damaged. And so they could have made a story about how this psychologically damaged man creates this psychologically damaged creation. But I think there's more going on there.
Mm-hmm. Or a story that valorizes he overcame this trauma and he had this pursuit for knowledge and discovery and to conquer death. But because of his tragic flaw, he failed. And it's I feel the movie is not that easy on him.
No.
So now he's been frittering away all of this time flirting with his future sister-in-law. And then Harlander says, my patience is running thin. I'm running out of money. You've got a week. So Victor, we get this gruesome sequence of him doing all this work to finish building his setup, but also
well, actually, Elizabeth comes to visit him.
She brings the butterfly that the two of them caught earlier.
Yeah. And then she basically says to him, the reason I'm here is to say we can't do this anymore.
And she's opining. Yeah. She says she monologues about the anatomy of the butterfly. And then that is a springboard for her talking about what makes humans human versus the beasts that she studies. And she says what makes humans human is that God endowed us with choice. I've made my choice. I feel this plot line, part of it is to show the things that Elizabeth and Victor have in common and the very important ways that they diverge in terms of their character. And I don't mean character in a work of fiction. I mean character moral character. But also given that it is 2025, I feel part of what this plot does is give Victor incel vibes and make you hate him more.
Yeah.
So there's that going on. So yeah, and then we get this gruesome sequence where
but sorry, just to finish that out, just to be clear. So yeah, so she basically says my choice is that I'm going to marry your brother, and I'm not going to continue seeing you in effect, or we're not going to continue this beyond, we're not going to turn this into an affair. And Victor's
he's shocked.
He's well, what?
But I wanted.
Yeah.
I made it very clear what I wanted, so why am I not getting it?
Yeah, exactly. And he chases after her. She runs away. And then this is when he, he's having trouble at this point, prior to this, kind of figuring out the thing that can actually sustain the corpse once it's alive.
Oh, yeah, and something that she said to him is what gives him the eureka moment, something about symmetry.
Yeah. The symmetry, when she's talking about the butterfly.
Oh, she's actually talking about the corpse in his office when she talks about symmetry, remember?
Oh, yeah.
It's like this vivisected corpse from behind.
Yeah.
And what is it that he realizes from the symmetry?
Yeah, I mean, they talk about how there's the lymphatic system and then there's the part surrounding the heart. And at first, Harlander's like, oh, we could go in through the front. And then Victor's like, no, if we go in through the back, there's even better access. And then so he's trying to figure out how to get in through the back. And it's not really clear what he changes, but I guess after having this conversation with Elizabeth and the conversation about symmetry, he's like, gets out of the bath and is looking at his own back. And he's like, yes, the symmetry. And he like pulls the plugs out and puts them in a different way. And all of a sudden the creature, the proto creature.
This is a prototype, yeah. So then we get the gruesome sequence where he is just grave robbing like crazy and just objectifying all of these.
With the support of Harlander's money and resources and like men, like other troops.
It makes me think of like a common refrain among like the Jewish groups that I'm a part of that have been advocating for the past more than 2 years for a ceasefire in Gaza. Something that we say a lot is that the Torah teaches us that every life is a universe. So each of the tens of thousands of people who have been senselessly murdered, for each of them an entire universe was extinguished. And like I feel like that it's such a clarifying refrain when you think of like how in war the scale of this death, like to really remind yourself every single life contains an entire universe, and the inhumanness and the grossness of like him just chopping up these bodies,
selecting the optimal parts.
Yeah, picking over all of these universes for parts.
Yeah.
And we see him like mopping the blood and like bagging all these discarded
he's certainly not
body
afraid
parts.
to get his hands dirty.
No, but like not in an admirable way.
Yeah.
It's gross. He sucks. I hate him so much. And then in the climactic moment where he is going to channel the storm to bring his creature to life.
Harlander, I
am so sorry. Harlander reveals that he has advanced stage syphilis. And he says, my condition is that I want you to put my brain into this perfect body.
My condition for you using all my time and resources. Because up to this point, he's pretty much just said, I want you to pursue discovery and science.
Which, like, is significant because it's like all of these great men who say that they're pursuing great ideals, like, they've all got a fucking agenda, you know? So Victor says, no, I'm not going to do that. Syphilis is systemic. It's in your brain as well. If we brought your brain into this body, it would infect the entire body. And they fight. It comes to blows. Harlander is like so determined to get what he wants that he tries to sabotage the procedure, take one of the conductors away. They're fighting over it. Harlander falls down that big, beautiful Yannick waterfall, which we knew somebody was going to fall down that thing, right? Like, as soon as you saw it, you're like, oh, someone's going down. Someone's going to plummet. Yeah, it's a big hole in the floor that goes down multiple stories. It's the gun on the wall. So, yeah, he plummets down. He crushes his brain. Victor does his procedure. It seems that the creature has not come to life. He goes to bed.
Yeah, I think it was funny how he fell asleep too. Like all throughout this, like I'm kind of looking at this as like obviously a analogy of birth and the process of like procreation, and like the way he falls asleep is very funny because it's kind of like that stereotypical or that typical like man after sex vibes of just like like just passed out, like completely exhausted.
Oh, see, I was thinking of like a woman who has just given birth being like, great, you know. But yeah, I think like the stuff with the mom, the stuff with the milk, the stuff with I'm gonna create, and like, and knowing that this is based on a novel that a 20-year-old woman wrote, I think that there's a lot in there about like a man trying to take away woman's capacity to create life.
Yeah, and Victor's monologue at the beginning tribunal, it's kind of funny though, because he says like the creation of life, or birth, really has been relegated to God, basically. But here on Earth, we have the chance of trying to control death.
Yeah, which is so funny. Like the act of creation has been relegated to God. Is there anyone else who maybe participates in the act of creation pretty actively that you can think of besides God? No? Okay. So, yeah, the creature comes and finds him. At first, he is so delighted. He introduces himself.
Victor introduces himself at first Victor is so delighted. Yeah.
Yeah, and the creature immediately is able to repeat his name. He shows him sunlight. The creature feels the sun. And then he immediately takes him down into the basement, chains him up, gives him a blanket, and just leaves him in this cold, wet dungeon. And he openly admits, I put so much thought into the process of creating this creature. I put no thought into how I was going to parent him and to care for him.
Yeah. And it doesn't, I mean, obviously that is the implication of what he is saying, but he doesn't even say it in that, like he says what I should do after I've, created this being.
He doesn't think...
Yeah, he doesn't even really concede it a being. Yeah, he's still considering it very much like, now that I've made this discovery, I just kind of feel empty inside.
Yeah, which maybe there's like something in there about like postpartum depression. I don't know. I definitely was thinking during this sequence about parents of disabled children have this analogy that they talk about. I think that the analogy is very neutral. I don't feel any type of positive or negative way about it. The way that my mom explained it to me in terms of her relationship with me when I was born, certainly I felt very positive about. I've heard other people use the same analogy in a way that I feel really negative about, which is when you are pregnant, you are preparing for a trip to Paris, right? Like you're researching Paris, you're making your hotel bookings, you're buying the right clothing for what the weather reports say it will be like in Paris. The plane lands and you're in Finland, which is to say, like, you've been preparing to parent a typical child. And then you arrive at your parenting experience, and it is with a medically involved disabled child. You have not prepared for this. And there's nothing wrong with Finland, right? Like, Finland is beautiful. Finland is incredible. It is not what you have prepared for. And so you need to figure it out. That's how my mom explained it to me. Like, there's this amazing world to explore, and I did not prepare for it at all. Especially for an experience like the one that my mom had, where like she had a completely typical pregnancy, and then due to things that happened during the birth, she had a disabled child, right? Because it's not like, you did genetic testing and you know that you're expecting a baby with Down syndrome or something. And it can be a like really beautiful metaphor about parenthood, because like no matter what, you're gonna be somewhere besides where you planned to be. That's parenthood. It's an act of surrender. And also meaningfully, when you have a medically involved infant, that is a lot, and it is different, because like it is an all-encompassing task to parent a baby in the first place. To parent a medically involved baby is, that plus there's a hat on it, right? So yeah, I was definitely like, I was thinking a lot during this sequence about parenthood as an act of surrender, and his disappointment with the creature, that the creature didn't have more of a vocabulary. And like how you see that for parents of disabled children who are not as lucky as I was, that like, your abilities are different from what I expected them to be, and therefore you're a disappointment. You are wrong. And like the mistreatment that stems from that. We know that disabled children are far more vulnerable to abuse than typical children. and the type of abuse that we see in the movie. Keeping your child, I know child, right, like it's a 7-foot man, but but he at this juncture is meaningfully a child, and he's kept isolated, and like he is not given any like normal human comforts. Victor says he doesn't know the difference, and like this ends up being, in this story as in life, a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, if you have a child with cognitive differences and then you keep them isolated and you don't give them any enrichment, you don't expect them to be able to communicate, and you don't explore ways that they are able to communicate that are maybe different from the types of communication that you expect out of a typical developing child, like, yeah, they're not going to advance, you know? That seems very obvious to me as somebody who is in education. Not so obvious to Victor, right? He definitely like is attached to one model of intelligence.
And really is showing how much like his father.
His father fucked with him, yeah.
In that, like, his father treated him the same way. His father didn't like how Victor's expression his himself,
demeanor, yeah,
and therefore his father put up with him at best.
Yeah, the only way that I want you to be is this way that I have in my head, and I'm not going to see the specialness and the gifts that my actual child has. Again, it's like I keep going back to this phrase, parenting as an act of surrender. If you're not willing to surrender, if you're not willing to embrace the reality that you're faced with instead of the fantasy that you had in your head, you will be disappointed. And this is true of parenting a disabled child, and this is true of parenting any child. So, you know, we see this mistreatment start to take shape. We see the creature begin to be afraid of Victor. And then, and we discover that the creature can heal, kind of like Wolverine.
Which I don't believe was an original part of...
No, that's a Guillermo del Toro joint. That's not from the original novel. We're back.
We never left.
We never left.
Time is an illusion.
Time is a lake. And what I was saying moments ago, and also centuries ago.
And also will be saying for forever.
Is that Elizabeth and the brother are making their way to the castle. Why?
Because they hadn't heard from Harlander, obviously, because it did, but they don't know that. And so she really wants to go check in on him. So they go.
So they show up. Victor is very excited to show them the creature, and what?
Well, I think he's really excited. So it's funny because they show up, he's surprised because he's like, I wasn't really ready for this, but he's happy to see them. And he's like, come on upstairs. I want to well,
he wants to prime them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think he's not really ready to show them the creature yet.
He wants them to know what he's accomplished, and he does not want them to know what happened to Harlander.
And he's kind of in this frenetic,
manic state.
Yeah. He's hasn't slept and has just been caring, quote unquote, keeping the creature alive.
Yeah. And he seems sickly.
Yes.
Yeah. So as he's talking to his brother, Elizabeth makes her way down into the basement and with no introduction meets the creature. Immediately they have a tender dynamic between the two of them, and he doesn't hurt her. At no point in the entire movie does the creature hurt her. And then she kind of challenges Victor and says, you're mistreating him. He says he doesn't know the difference. And also something went wrong.
Victor says.
Yeah. Victor says he doesn't know the difference. And Victor says something went wrong. He hasn't learned anything except for my name. And Elizabeth says, well, probably because that word is the center of his world right now. That means everything to him. And then I think we go right to the nighttime when she makes her way down there to visit with the creature. And they have this sweet moment where he gifts her a leaf. So his favorite pastime down in the basement is to take these leaves, set them down in the running water, and watch them wash away outside. And he gives her a leaf because that's all that he has. And she accepts it as the very meaningful gift that it is. And he learns her name. Elizabeth and Victor have an argument. She says there's something pure and good about him. And Victor says, it almost seems like you're attracted to him. At this point, you made a comment about like, now I hate the creature because he's scamming on my woman. This kind of part of the vibe.
Right. Yeah. That Victor's coming at it from that perspective. So then he tells William that basically something has gone wrong and that he needs to send them away so that he can take care of it.
Well, he shows William Harlander's body and says that the creature killed Harlander, which is the first instance of Victor blaming a murder on the creature. And that's where you're like, oh my God, I hate this guy. And sends them away because he says, the creature is a danger to Elizabeth.
So William and Elizabeth leave in their carriage and they're making their way out. And as that's happening, we go back to the water tower and Victor you can tell that he's basically decided to just destroy everything. The whole tower, he's just going to burn it all down.
With the creature in it. So he's pouring gasoline all over everything.
And I guess he already made this decision, but kind of like the thing that finally broke him was hearing the creature say Elizabeth's name.
Right, which is I was so mad because he was talking to this creature and the creature is just saying, Victor, Victor, back at him. And he's saying, say any other word. Show me that you have learned anything. Give me a reason to spare your life. And the creature says, Elizabeth. And then he just proceeds to try to murder him anyway.
Because he's jealous of Elizabeth's fascination with the creature. It's like she has a fascination with the creature. And I think it goes more than just like a fascination of a creature. Like I think she does see the humanity in the creature.
And the innocence.
Yeah. And Victor is upset that he can't get that same reaction from her.
Well, yeah, because he doesn't have any innocence. He sucks. And I think like at this point, she has also clocked him for the jerk that he is.
Yeah.
So he just goes on to murder this guy and then that he created. Yeah. Murder his own child. And then, which again, there's a lot of instances of these kinds of tragedies befalling disabled children. So Elizabeth and William come back. They find that Victor has, after setting everything on fire, I think he changes his mind and he goes in to try to rescue the creature.
Yeah, they make it seem like he was because he hears the creature screaming his name as he's leaving the tower. And then he turns around and he runs back
to the front door, opens it, and is blown off by an explosion of fire. Yeah. And that's how he sustains the injury to his leg. He loses his leg. The creature, meanwhile, escapes through the pipe that he's been sending leaves out through.
Yeah.
And then at this point, we cut back to the conversation on the ship. The creature has arrived.
Yeah, the creature basically barges in on what has been happening this whole time, which is Victor telling his story to the captain of the boat. And then the creature, as Victor predicted, comes back, barges in, and says, oh, Victor's been telling you his story. Well, let me tell you mine now. And so now we go
to the flashback from this point in the story from the creature's perspective. He is in the woods. He communes with some kind of antlered animal, a deer or something. Again, we see his gentleness. I think these scenes also happen in the book. He's feeding the animal leaves. A pair of hunters come, shoot the deer, and then spot the creature. They think he's a bear or some kind of monster. They start shooting at him. He wanders off. He finds a cabin. It's like some kind of storage or mill house attached to a residence. He hides out there. Again, you see Well, I didn't notice this while we were watching it, but they're definitely emphasizing his connection with animals because there are rats and they kind of crawl on top of him and they just all nap together. And the two hunters are part of a family that lives for part of the year in this house. There's an old man who is blind, a little girl, the little girl's mom, and the two hunters. And the creature starts helping them, leaving kindling for their fire. He builds them a fence. The family calls this the spirit of the forest, and they leave him gifts too. And eventually, the hunters, the little girl and the mom, leave. It seems that they stay with the old man during the summers and then leave during the winters. Yeah, the wolves come in and attack the sheep. The hunters come take out the wolves, and the creature learns. He has a real insight from this. He says, I realize that, like, the wolves don't have ill will toward the sheep, the hunters don't have ill will toward the wolves, and yet the violence between them is inevitable, and such is the way of nature. Like, imagine that being one of the first things that you learn in an existence where everybody immediately sees you and attacks you physically, right? And so the family leaves, and they're going to sell, like, the furs and the meat and stuff. And yeah, and they leave the old man alone where he lives there usually most of the year. And then we have the sequence, again, mirroring the book. I think this is like kind of a famous scene from both the movie and the book, where the creature comes in and the old man is very warm and friendly to him. And they spend the summer together as friends. And he teaches the creature how to read the Bible and mythology and philosophy. And then the creature confides in him that he does not remember where he comes from. He only remembers a name. And the old man says, follow that name. And so the creature does follow that name. He finds the ruins of the water tower, and he realizes that he is reanimated from the body parts of all of these corpses, and he's horrified by it. He returns to the old man's cabin. The wolves have attacked the old man. He comes in, he takes down all the wolves, and has a beautiful conversation with the old man as he's dying, as the old man is dying, where he says where he came from, and the old man says, you're a good man. And then the hunters return, immediately blame the old man's death on the creature, attack him.
Yeah, they shoot him first, and then he, attacks one of them and kills them, and then, like, stumbles out of the house having been shot. And then the other two hunters, still alive, follow him out into the snow, and they shoot him again. And then that's where he falls down in the snow, seemingly dead.
Yeah, but we know that he's not dead. Yeah, he wakes up and he realizes he can't die, and this breaks his heart. He wishes for death.
Yeah, not only has he just learned that he is an amalgamation of corpses, but he must suffer the fate of not dying.
And so the loneliness is threatening to consume him. He gets it in his head that what he needs is a companion. So he goes to find Victor, who is with William and Elizabeth on the eve of their wedding. We see Victor interact with Elizabeth. She is done with him at this point. He's still in love with her. The creature comes and finds Victor. Victor is a smarmy asshole. Just says, I see that you're well and that you've learned how to speak. Have you come to thank me? The creature, but I feel like that's another, like, way that this movie is referencing toxic parent-child relationships. Like, I brought you into this world, I can take you out of it, or I brought you into this world, and so, like, you just owe me indefinite compliance. And the creature asks for a companion. Victor denies him, and in denying him, basically calls him monstrous and a horrible thing to doom the world to his existence, which is real rich coming from a guy who thought this was a great idea.
The creature starts beating Victor up, and there's an altercation. He's throwing him around, And then that's when Elizabeth comes in.
Is so happy to see that the creature is alive. They're like hugging or something. Like they're having a completely innocent interaction. And then Victor goes to shoot the creature and instead shoots Elizabeth.
Well, he goes to... Elizabeth is kind of stepped to the side. He says, "Watch out, Elizabeth." And then she realizes what he's about to do and steps in front of.
Oh, shit. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Steps in front of the creature, takes the bullet. William comes in with some groomsmen. Victor immediately blames the creature for Elizabeth's death. There's more of a scuffle, and then William gets wounded. So then we see the creature scoop up Elizabeth and carry her kind of princess style out of the house. And William and Victor are left together. And William's last words for Victor are pretty intense.
Yeah.
So it's something like, all of the calamities in my life have followed from you. You are the monster. Meanwhile, Elizabeth dies in a cave in the company of the creature and tells him
She wishes things could have been different, or she loves him. I don't think she said she loves him, but something.
that they have a kinship and that she admires his heart. And the creature is very sad. He wishes only that he could follow her. And at this point, Victor is just dead set on destroying the creature.
Well, at this point, the creature is enraged and is just like, you created me without my permission, and then you've doomed me to eternal life. And he said, and because of that, I will follow you and haunt you for the rest of your days. And then, it kind of transitions basically to the point where...
Well, at that point, they both have the same goal, right? Like, at this point, they both want the creature dead.
Yes.
So they have a scuffle, and that's where that key line that you just referenced comes in, where the creature says to Victor, "You only listen when I hurt you," which is, I feel like, where the movie is referencing the cycle of abuse, especially like from fathers to sons to sons to their sons to their sons, that like, what else would the creature have learned from Victor but to be heard by using violence? And Victor has a stick of dynamite, and the creature says, "Okay, I'm going to take it, and you better hope that it works. Now run." And Victor runs away. We hear the explosion that at the beginning of the movie, it's the explosion that the soldiers heard.
The narrative of what has been going in the flashback has caught up to the beginning of the film.
So we're back on the ship, and the ending is, I would say, like, I shouldn't say the most implausible part of this movie, because everything about this movie is pretty implausible. But in terms of like character growth, Victor apologizes for everything, owns his mistake and harm, and says, "Now you're doomed to be alive, so live."
Yeah, it does feel a little shoehorned in. Like, okay, we gotta make, like, wrap this up and turn this into a morality tale.
Yeah, I wish that the creature had had that interaction instead with Elizabeth, and I wish that Victor had not gotten to enjoy absolution, but that's just like my opinion, man. So Victor dies in the creature's arms. Oh, he begs him to say his name one more time. He says, "Please say my name the way that you did in the beginning." And he says, my father gave it to me and soiled it with his treatment of me. Can you please give it back to me the way that you did then? So like finally acknowledging the gift that he squandered in the creature's trust for him.
Yeah. And I think that maybe I would push back on what you said earlier about you wish it had been Elizabeth, because I think it was almost necessary for the creature to have to forgive in order for it to kind of complete the morality tale of like...
I think the creature could forgive without Victor getting to enjoy absolution.
Yeah, that's true.
That's like something that is a big deal with like recovery circles and stuff. Like trauma recovery from abuse and assault. You're supposed to forgive, but not like
absolve of...
Or like not like via an interaction with the person who harmed you. Anyway, the last shot that we see is the creature... So first he frees the ship. He just pushes it because he's got super strength too. And the captain says, "We're going home." So he has given up his hubris.
Yeah. In response to like these cycles of prideful men destroying themselves and the people around them. The captain, like Harlander and like Victor, is seemingly on the same path because he is driving himself and his men through the Arctic. No matter what, they will complete their mission. The captain has been in the room with the creature and Victor, and his crew is still outside. And the crew's like, there's a creature in there with him. We got to kill the creature. The creature killed 6 of our guys. And so, the captain opens up the door and says, no.
Let him through.
Let him through. He deserves to be let free.
So by telling his story, the creature has earned status as a human and among humans.
Yes.
Which is a sad state of affairs and also less bleak than what we might have feared based on all of the ways that humans have reacted to him.
Yeah. And so I think what it was not just, everything Victor had said to him, but also the actions of the captain to basically, because I don't think the creature went in there expecting, he was on a violent path going in there and he wanted Victor dead, basically. And so Victor dies, but I think he kind of realizes when the captain lets him go, they don't ask him to push the ship off to free the ship. He chooses, he kind of, you can, in the scene, you see him think about it for a moment and kind of look back at the captain. And so it was kind of that act of goodwill towards him. This might be stretching it a little bit, but like that earlier point that he learned from the wolves about violence kind of being inevitable, it's almost like he adds a building block on top of that of like,
I can choose altruism.
Yeah, I can choose to do the quote-unquote right thing.
Mm-hmm. And then the last thing that we see is the creature facing the sun and feeling it on his face with a tear coming down his cheek, which, like, we remember at the beginning, one of the first things, the first interaction between the creature and Victor was Victor introducing the creature to the sun, saying, we love the sun feels warm on our faces, enjoy the sun, and then immediately dragging him down to the basement and chaining him away from the sun. So now he has been figuratively and literally set free and can truly feel the sun on his face. And that's the end of the story. And it's very beautiful. So yeah, what are some thoughts on this that we didn't already talk about?
We talked a little bit about the gender aspects. I think there is maybe a little bit more we can expand upon there.
Yeah, so this whole thing is replete with gender. We've got
gender.
We've got the mommy issues, drinking the milk. The ultimate achievement of a capital G, capital M great man would be usurping the ability of women to create life and claiming it for himself. Yeah, and then the other gender thing going on is the great men and their hubris in all of its callous disregard for the dignity and well-being of the people and sentient creatures around them, and Elizabeth as a example of the counterbalance, the challenge to that.
Do you think this film speaks with a feminist ideology?
Yes.
Or feminist lens?
Mm-hmm. Do you think so?
I do. And it's interesting because Victor starts out, obviously, as a kid, being sort of like the creature, like being curious, enjoying like the close relationship he has with his mother. And there are signs of it being like narcissistic, like she's mine. But in some ways, before his mom dies,
Mm-hmm.
Victor is somewhat like the creature. And in a similar way, I think the creature kind of, as he develops and learns and then goes through tragedy, also becomes like Victor, like kind of like blinded by this rage of destroying himself and also destroying Victor. And then in the end, Victor is not able to break out of that cycle, but the creature is. I think it's interesting, kind of their parallel, to some extent, how their lives parallel.
I think their lives paralleling each other is really crucial for, I think, what would be a main takeaway for most viewers, which is like, which one of them is truly the monster? You would expect it to be the creature. It's actually Victor, but is he even actually a monster? What does it mean to be a monster? Does it mean to look monstrous? Does it mean to do monstrous things? Or does it mean to have something fundamentally broken and cruel about you? Because we can see, as you referenced, the seeds of Victor's narcissism even in his boyhood. But not all narcissism is malignant or malignant in all situations. So I think every capital G, capital M great man has some real narcissistic tendencies, because it takes some level of narcissism in order to attempt to do something impossible, right? And I think by showing us Victor's redemption and absolution at the end, it's even challenging its own challenge, the movie is, right? Because the first challenge is, the monster isn't the creature. The monster is actually the great man whose hubris created this creature and caused all of this tragedy. But, is he even really a monster? Or did he have a tragic flaw? I like that it engages with that question on several levels. I'm thinking of a Lindsay Ellis video essay called My Monster Boyfriend. It talks a lot about Guillermo del Toro and The Shape of Water in particular. And she tracks like Beauty and the Beast stories, like different iterations of Beauty and the Beast stories through the ages, and how they tend to serve as parables peddling the morality of the era. And also, like, they reflect back modern day anxieties from whenever that story is told. So the first Beauty and the Beast story is like a parable that can help prepare a young woman to enter into an arranged marriage by saying, like, well, if you're just very, demure and submissive, eventually your beast will turn into a prince. And then another example that she brings up is King Kong, where we see like that film is clearly reflecting back racial anxieties. And then also we see one of the first iterations of like the purity of the woman finding the humanity in this creature, right? And then The Shape of Water, now we're really meaningfully engaging with how these stories about people with spoiled identities, monsters, deformed people who are seen as in some way not fully human, are not truly the monster, and the real monstrous thing is the stigmatization and the violence against othered social groups. And you see examples of that in The Shape of Water, Wicked. What else? There are lots of stories like this. Frankenstein, the one that we just watched, obviously.
The entirety of the X-Men struggle is like them as mutants versus like the humans who want to try to kill them because they're different.
These kinds of stories always remind me of the book Stigma by Irving Goffman and the concept of spoiled identity. It's a moving target, right? Like identities that would fully push someone to the margins of society. Like that's always shifting, and hopefully it's shifting in such a way that fewer and fewer people are marginalized to that degree. Although lately I'm rather pessimistic, and I think maybe it's more just a matter of who falls into the category of the scapegoat du jour. But there is a difference between stigma and marginalization that makes it so that you face structural barriers or experience microaggressions, and spoiled identity stigma, where like you truly cannot exist in society, to the point where like there were ugly laws in the books, right, until the late 1970s in part of this country, where if you were sufficiently deformed, quote unquote deformed, it was literally illegal for you to be out in public. And I think stories like Frankenstein or Wicked are engaging more with that type of stigma. There's no logical reason why these people should be so marginalized, and yet.
Right. It comes out of this, of more conservative members of society, people who tend to believe in a natural order of things. And when that natural order is broken, according to their terms, they have these feelings of disgust, and these feelings of disgust are so powerful to them that they feel that they must do something about it. They feel compelled to speak out, to say something hateful, to legalize things about that restrict certain people from ever showing
Yeah,
up.
to try to legislate certain types of people out of existence, like we're currently seeing with trans people. I don't know, have we talked about this on the pod before? I know we've talked about it between the two of us, but disgust as an emotion being, and this surprised me when I learned it, actually a learned response. So like disgust, because it feels so visceral, almost physical, and because it's an important emotion to protect us from contamination and like illness, it is good that we are disgusted by poop, because we can catch a lot of diseases that could kill us if we get too close to poop or like get it anywhere near our mouths or any other orifices. And so to that, like when you first look at disgust, it seems as if it is pretty simple and evolutionarily advantageous. But actually, it is learned. Babies are not disgusted by poop. We have to teach them. And so when we have that disgust response to somebody with a facial difference or somebody who is gender nonconforming in a way that like falls outside the lines of what is socially inscribed as natural, as good, as normal, and we have a disgust response, it feels as if like we are drawing on primal knowledge about what is good and right and natural. And in reality, it is a learned response. And what is natural does include bodily variance and gender variance and all kinds of variance, because nature is weird and messy. And so I think these types of stories really draw on that. And like the heavy presence of Christianity and Christian theology in Frankenstein kind of highlighted that for me.
Yeah.
And the model of Christianity coming from Elizabeth that is so charitable and loving and restorative.
Yeah, I until we started talking about this, I didn't even really appreciate the fact that, yeah, Elizabeth is, as would likely make sense, a Christian, or, is certainly a believer in God. And I totally missed that point because she is so empathetic, and not to say that Christians aren't empathetic, but just because I can easily associate Christianity with this sense of natural order. Elizabeth finding beauty in something like insects, and that kind of going against what would be considered the standard of beauty of her time. It kind of went over my head that she was a believer in God.
It's her humility, right? It's not that she thinks that there's not a natural order. It's that she thinks that there is a natural order, and it is too great and profound and complex for her to wrap her mind around. So that's the faith piece. She puts her trust in God, and in the moments of like symmetry and like all of the variation in the natural world that fascinates her is her way of like glimpsing a piece of that natural order that she understands to be beyond her comprehension. And I think that's a really restorative interpretation of that. Like there is a natural prescribed order of things. It's like, well, maybe you can have that belief, but it's one thing to have that belief. It's another thing to have that belief and say, and I know what it is, and you're not part of it. Like this the hubris.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
how have we learned to love in a society?
I think this isn't the most obvious takeaway, I guess, from this, but it's the first thing that popped into my head simply because it's a Guillermo del Toro movie. And it is to make a lot of room for beauty and the types of beauty that are not like what we would necessarily expect. Things that are beautiful in a way that is maybe challenging or fills us with awe or maybe evokes discomfort or disgust.
Yeah, and I think part of this movie, and also part of a book that we may be discussing sometime soon, is exploring how, in a way, death is beautiful in its own merit.
Because what could be a greater source of wonder and awe than oblivion?
Yeah, which isn't to say that, like, death is... Well, I don't know. I think we'll leave it there because I think we'll have much more to discuss on it in a future episode.
That's a cool thing about like Gothic art, right? Is like engaging with death and engaging with the beauty of death without in a way that normalizes it.
Yeah,
because it is as natural as breathing.
Yeah, And no matter what our station on this earth, we are all, unlike Frankenstein's creature, condemned to death.
And condemned to live. I love you.
I love you too.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. It didn't, the buttons don't like me. This is like the fog machine in James and the Giant Peach that hated me.
Yes.